Hello, my amazing students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. Today we're doing lesson 5 in your Saxon Course 3 pre-algebra book. We are talking about fractional parts. Okay, what are the next 3 numbers in this sequence? Now, this was just in your book, and I thought it was cool. 5, 3, 8, 6, 11, blank, blank, blank. Can you see a pattern? Okay, we'll come back to that as we go through the problem. But right now, I just want you to see if you can see that pattern. But what is a fraction? Numerator over denominator makes a fraction. The numerator is the number of parts described, and the denominator is the number of equal parts in a whole. So we have our first problem here. A quart is 32 ounces. What would 3/4 of a quart be? 3/4 is the same as 3/4. It would be how many ounces? So 3/4 of a quart is 3/4 of a quart, which is 3/4 of 32 ounces. Now, of means times. So anytime we see of in a problem, we're going to replace it with times, and 3/4 times 32. Now, there's usually an easy way and a hard way to do something, okay? Multiplication and division can be done in the order that we want to do them, okay? So I can choose to multiply 3 times 32 and then divide the result by 4. Then I got to multiply 3 by 32, which is going to give me a bigger number. Or I could take 32 and divide it by 4, which I already know what that is in my head. And then I take that number and multiply by 3. Do you see what I did? I took the 32 the first time and multiplied it by 3 and then divided that whole big number by 4, and that would give me the right answer. Or I could take the 32 and divide it by 4, since 4 is the number of parts that the whole is divided into. So I could find out what one part equals, and then I could multiply that one part by 3 and get the answer much faster. Let's see if we get the same thing both ways. 3 times 32 is going to be 96. And 96 divided by 4, we got to get our thinking caps out. Okay, 96 divided by 4 is going to give us 4 into 9 goes 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. 9 take away 8 is 1. Bring down my 6. 4 into 16 is 4. Okay, so I get 24 as my answer when I multiply and then divide. Now, let's take this off the board. Let's see if we get 24 when we do it the easy way. 32 times 1/4, which is 32 divided by 4, is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. And that one was so easy, I didn't even have to write it down. Okay, so here is the next one. We are going to say 30 questions are on a test. 1/3 of the questions were true, false. 2/5 of the questions were multiple choice. How many true, false? How many multiple choice? So we have to remember that 30 altogether, 1/3 true, false, 2/5 were multiple choice. So let's work those out. Okay, so we have 30, 1/3 of 30 is true, false. Okay, so what is 1/3 of 30? We could just multiply the fraction. Remember when we multiply, remember this is times, we would say 1/3 times 30 is the same as 30 over 1. Okay, now we could multiply straight across and say 30 over 3, but that would leave us with a little bit of work left to do. Remember that when we multiply, we can cancel first, and that often makes things much easier. So I'm going to look and say, well, does a 3 go into 30? And it does. So I'm going to divide this by 3 and give me 1. I'm going to divide this by 3 and give me 10. 1 times 10 is 10. 1 times 1 is 1. And when we have a 1 in the denominator, then it really is just an integer, or in this case, a natural number. 10 is the number of true false. Okay, that's one way to do it. Or we could have done it with 30 divided by 10 and then multiply that result by 1, and we would have gotten 10 again. Okay, so now what about the 2/5 that were multiple choice? So we know we have 10 true false. So now let's go back up here, and we're looking for 2/5 of 30 equals the number of multiple choice. Okay, and then we'll erase this whole line. All right, so now we could do this with multiplying the top two and get 60 and divide that by 5. 60 divided by 5 is 12. If you know your multiplication facts, that makes it easy. Or we could have said 30 divided by 5, which is 6, and then 6 times 2, which is also 12. Or we could have done it one more way. We could have said 2/5 times 30 over 1, turn the 30 into a fraction. And then we could have said, well, 5 goes into both of those, 1 and 6 times. 2 times 6 is 12. 1 times 1 is 1. And 12 over 1 is 12. So we had 12 multiple choice and 10 true false. This one's fun because now we're going to start comparing fractional parts. Arrange from least to greatest. Now, one very handy way to do this is to see if your fractions are equal to 1/2, less than 1/2, or greater than 1/2. And sometimes we can do that without getting common denominators, okay? So it's just kind of a quick, easy way. If all we're doing is arranging them from least to greatest, sometimes this will work. Okay, so 3/6, 3 is half of 6, so 3/6 simplifies to 1/2. So if I'm going to put my number line here with 0 and 1 right there, 1/2 would be right in the middle. And 1/2 is the same thing as 3/6. Okay? Now 3/5, what is half of 5? Well, half of 5 is 2.5. 2 and 3 is bigger than 2.5. So we know that 3/5 is bigger than 1/2. Okay, so we're going to say 3/5 would be right here, a little bit bigger than 1/2. 3/8, what's half of 8? Half of 8 is 4. So 3 is not yet 4, is it? So 3/8 would be less than 1/2. So 3/8 goes first. It's the least. 3/6 is in the middle. It's 1/2. And 3/5 is a little bit bigger than 1/2. So that's the order that they go in. We never had to get common denominators. Sometimes we will have to, though. Okay, so here's our last example. Compare 2/3 of an hour and 2/5 of an hour. So we're really comparing 2/3 and 2/5. Now, we could do all of the math involved, or we could do it a simple way. 2/3, is that more than a half or less than a half? 2/3, half of 3 is 1.5. Okay, so 2 is bigger than 1.5. Therefore, 2/3 is greater than 1/2. Okay, let's look at 2/5. Half of 5 is 2.5. When I cut 5 in half, I have 2.5. 2 is less than 2.5. Therefore, 2/5 is less than 1/2. So 2/5 is smaller. 2/3 is greater. 2/3 is greater than 2/5. Now, let's do this another way. Let's go back to, what is 2/3 of an hour? 2/3 of 60 minutes. Let's find out exactly how many minutes each one is, just for fun. 2/3 of 60 minutes. Let's do it the fast way. 60 divided by 3 is 20. And 20 times 2 is 40 minutes. 2/3 of an hour is 40 minutes. 2/5 of an hour. Okay, so 2/5 of 60 minutes. 60 divided by 5 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 24 minutes. So were we correct? 2/5 was 24 minutes, and 2/3 was 40 minutes, and 40 is indeed greater than 2/5, isn't it? Okay, so here we are. 1/6 of an hour is how many minutes? Now we're on our practice set already. So I want you to try to do these without me. So pause your video for a minute, try to do these without me, and then come back and look and see if you got them right. 1/6 of an hour. Now we're trying to get to minutes. So let's put an hour in minutes. So 1/6 of 60 minutes. Everybody should know that 60 minutes is an hour. Okay. So 60 divided by 6 is 10. 10 times 1 is 10. So this is 10 minutes. 1/6 of an hour is 10 minutes. 3/5 of 30 questions were multiple choice. How many were multiple choice? Okay, remember that the of means times. So we could multiply 3 times 30 and get 90 and divide 90 by 5. That would be one way to do it. Okay, we might have to get out our thinking caps to do that. But 90 divided by 5 is 18. Okay, or we could do it a little bit faster. 30 divided by 5 is 6. 6 times 3 is 18. I didn't have to think about that one. Or we could write 3/5 times 30 over 1 and do it like a regular fraction problem. We just turned the whole number into 30 over 1. And then we could say 30 and 5 gives me 1 and 6. When I divide that by 5, I get a 6. When I divide 5 by 5, I get a 1. And then 3 times 6 is 18. 1 times 1 is 1. A 1 on the bottom can just be, can disappear, can it? We don't really need it down there. So now, the problem says one more thing. It says explain why your answer is reasonable. Okay, so we're going to look at 3/5. Is 3/5 larger or smaller than a half? Well, half of 5 would be 2.5. And 3 is larger than 2.5. So 3/5 is a little more than a half. And half of 30 would be 15. And isn't 18 a little more than the 15? That's what they mean when they say explain why your answer is reasonable. All right, so here Greta drove 288 miles and used 8 gallons of gas. How many miles per gallon? When you see something like this, it's actually setting up the problem for you. Let's go ahead and write how many miles altogether. 288 miles per 8 gallons. Do you see how we've already got miles per gallon and miles per gallon just by writing the information of the problem down? Now, since we have this in the correct form, all we have to do is simplify this answer. What is 288 divided by 8? Okay, so 8 goes into 28 how many times? Okay, well, 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 3 is 24. So it's going to be 3 and a little bit, isn't it? So 3 times 8 is 24. 28 minus 24 is 4. Bring down the 8. 8 into 48 is 6. 6 times 8 is 48. So she is using she's getting 36 miles per gallon, which is not too bad at all. 36 miles per gallon. One more practice. All right, here's our last practice. We're supposed to range from least to greatest. So 5/10, 5 is half of 10. So 5/10 is 1/2. So we're going to put 5/10 right here on the 1/2 mark. 5/6, half of 6 is 3, and 5 is bigger than 3. So 5/6 is greater than a half. So we'll put 5/6 over here. 5/12. 12, half of that is 6. 5 is less than 6. Therefore, 5/12 goes in front of the half. And our numbers from least to greatest are 5/12, 5/10, and 5/6. Notice that all of the numerators were 5, but the denominator, just think about it. Would you rather have a 1/12 of a piece of pizza or a 1/6 of a piece of pizza? That means you have to divide that pizza with 12 people or divide that pizza with 6 people. Which one would you rather do? Which one's going to give you a bigger piece? 12 people sharing a pizza or 6 people sharing a pizza? I'd rather share a pizza with only 5 other people because I'm one of the 6 people, right? If I share that pizza with 12 people, 11 other people, that would be very much pizza, would it? So, the larger the denominator, if the numerators are the same, the larger denominator is the smaller piece of pizza. Okay, let's come back to that problem we talked about at the beginning. 5, 3, 8, 6, 11. Do you see the pattern? What's going on here? Could you continue and write 3 more numbers after that? Well, I look at 5 and I say, well, 3 is 2 less than 5, but then 8 is 5 more than 3. Does that repeat itself? 6, 8. 6 is 2 less than 8, isn't it? And then 11 is 5 more than 6. So is it going -2 plus 5 minus 2 plus 5? Looks good to me. So what would this one be? -2 plus 5 minus 2. And we would have our next 3 numbers. Okay, so Now I'm going to give you a little bit of instruction on what I have done for you in your packets. Okay, so we just did the 4 practice problems for you on the board. This is your workbook right here. Okay, you're supposed to, your little package, you're supposed to do the problem set, the practice sets, and then the problem set. Notice that this is A in the practice set of your workbook, which you're supposed to be doing for homework. How many minutes is 1/6 of an hour? 1 hour is how many minutes? Divide by the denominator, multiply by the numerator. This is the same problem as this one is. How many minutes is 1/6 of an hour? It's just that this one that I'm giving you in the workbook has some hints. This one over here is the workbook problem, and it has no hints. It's the same question, but in the workbook you have hints. In the book problem, you don't have as many hints. Look at the practice B down here. This is your workbook. This is the book problem. 3/5 of the 30 questions on the test were multiple choice. How many multiple choice questions were there? Explain why your answer is reasonable. 3/5 of the 30 questions on the test were multiple choice. How many multiple choice questions were there? Explain why your answer is reasonable. Look what the workbook has for you. Divide by the denominator, multiply by the numerator. How many questions? They're actually telling you a little bit more about how to do the problem. 3/5 is, that should be greater than or less than 1/2, and greater than, and then the fraction is greater than 1/2 of 30. The workbook gives you many more hints. If you didn't do the workbook, you would be doing the book problems, which are the same. The workbook gives you more hints. They go together. Okay, let's look at problem C and D in your workbook and problem C and D in the book homework. Both are in your packet. When you are doing your homework, I expect you to have you can separate the 2 pages. In other words, this one is stapled on the back. This one is stapled kind of in the middle of your packet. You can take this part off so that you can look at your problem and then do your workbook page that goes with it. You don't have to keep them stapled together. This is the part that you have to turn into me. I don't have to have this back. This is the part of the packet that you can leave at home for reference if you want to. Okay, Greta drove 288 miles and used 8 gallons of fuel. Greta's car traveled an average of how many miles per gallon of fuel? Here's the spot for your answer. Here is the hint. Okay, 288 goes in the house. Okay, that's your hint. They didn't do the problem for you, but they certainly gave you a good hint, didn't they? Same problem over here. Greta drove 288 miles and used 8 gallons of fuel. Exact same problem, no hint. Okay? Arrange these fractions from least to greatest. Hint. Compare each one to a half. 5/10, 5/6, 5/12. Arrange these fractions from least to greatest. 5/10, 5/6, 5/12. I just did those for you in this video. Do you see how they're exactly the same? This one, the workbook, is what you have to turn into me. It has more hints. Least, that's the middle one. That's the greatest one. I just did the problem for you. It should be no problem for you to do it now. Can you see how the workbook set and the homework set are exactly the same? The workbook has more hints. You should always have this one open while you're doing this one. Okay, here are the first 2 problems of your Workbook, homework. Divide by the denominator, multiply by the numerator. You don't know enough information here. 1 mile is blank yards. That's because you're supposed to be looking at page 33. I have copied page 33 in your packet. How many yards is 1/4 of a mile? A mile is 1,760 yards. So right here, you're going to write a mile is 1,760 yards. So now you have enough information. Divide by the denominator, multiply by the numerator. That is your hint. If you need help, you're going to go back and look at the examples. Here is number 2, and here is number 2 in your workbook. Notice here, they did not even tell you what the numbers were. Why? You're supposed to have your book out, looking at the 3 fractions. Arrange these fractions from least to greatest. Least to greatest. 2/4, 2/5, 2/3. Now I suggest you copy over here. 2/4, 2/5, 2/3. So you'll know what you're working on. And now you're going to arrange those. And guess what? You're going to put the answer to the problem. Oops, let's see if I can move this. Down here. The least, the middle, and the greatest. The 2 sets go together. Do not try to do this set, your workbook assignment, without having your book assignment in front of you. Okay, last 2 examples. Here is your workbook. This is number 3. Don't just do the problem. Go over here. Look at number 3. 2/3 of the game attendees were fans of the home team. If 600 people attended the game, how many were fans of the home team? Your workbook says 2/3 of the game attendees, 2/3, and then 600 attended. So they gave you a hint, 2/3 of 600. They give you a further hint. Divide by the denominator, multiply by the numerator so that you can work that problem and put the answer here. Okay, number 4. Look over at 4 in the book. Risa typed 192 words in 6 minutes. She typed an average how many words per minute? Here they set up part of the problem for you. But you have to look over here to finish setting up the problem. And they're telling you how to do it. But they're giving you a little hint. They're not giving you everything. You have to look at the book to see what you're supposed to divide by. I hope that helps, and I hope you understand a little bit better what you need to do to get your packets done well. I am, starting with lesson 5, grading the packets for correctness, not just for whether you got it here or not. So it is very important that you work hard on getting the packet done, not just completed, but done correctly. From here on out, your packets are going to get a grade, and you need to refer to your book homework, which is in your packet, and your packet, which is what you turn in to me. Now, I have included the book lesson and the summarized lesson in your packet. My cat is going crazy in the background. But this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.